Hello everyone, I hope you've been enjoying the last month's worth of content filmed up in unusually sunny Scotland. During my time there, I had a companion with me, and today I'm going to introduce you to them. It's the 2018 Kia Proceed. Now this is actually a 2019 model year car, if you like to do things the American way, and this is one of the first cars I actually built with the new style Proceed, and I actually probably saw this car last year when I was in Spain. Originally, I was due to take an electric car up to Scotland, the new Kia e-Niro. Unfortunately, something happened that meant that car was no longer available. I will be doing that trip as soon as possible, but in the meantime, I had to take something up to Scotland. And I thought, as I was already due to have something from Kia, it would be a good opportunity to grab something from the fleet, and let's be perfectly honest here, something with a little bit better MPG than my Mercedes. And when we were on the launch of the Proceed and the new Seed in Spain, Laurie and I spent a little bit of time in one of these cars, and we remarked upon how, well, nice they were and the sort of place that you'd like to spend a long journey. On that particular event, we actually did spend quite a bit of time in a car. However, we chose to spend our time in the new Seed GT with the manual gearbox. We made a mistake there. Although the Seed GT was immense fun in the twisty bits, for the big long slog back home, it was missing a couple of bits which really would have made our lives much more pleasant. And that's what this one has. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the way that Kia do things, their lineup is old-fashioned in a little way. You have trim levels to choose from, of which this is the top, the GT Line S. Now, the GT costs about the same, has a much peppier engine. It's a 2-litre with about 200 horsepower versus a 1.4 with the 140 horsepower that this has. However, the GT is missing some of the spec. The GT Line S is the most luxuriously spec'd trim level that you can actually choose. The two big omissions really for us were the fact that the GT did not have the nice big opening panoramic sunroof that this does, or the fancy JBL sound system. It's one of my bugbears with both Kia and Hyundai, that the way that they do their cars is that you can't really option anything on them. And as I really do like a decent sound system, missing that is, well, just not cool. I have done 1,237 miles in this car, so I'd like to feel that I am very well placed to talk about it. And the new Proceed is a bit of an oddity, if for no other reason than the fact that it bears almost no resemblance whatsoever to the previous one. The previous one, which is also spelled in a very different and odd way, was a 3-door hatchback, the sort of sporty one of the lineup. This is more of a shooting brake. In fact, more than one person has commented on the fact that it looks like a shrunken Porsche Panamera. And actually looking at it from the side, I can kind of see what they are on about. I spent so much time driving this car and doing things this week that it's due to be collected in about an hour, and we had to get some quick drive-by shots done last night with the fading lights. So I apologise for my lack of continuity there. This one is equipped with Kia's dual clutch transmission, and it costs just shy of £29,000 on the road. That might sound like an awful lot of money, because it is. Now, my good friends at Pendle Lease came up with some lease deal figures for me, and you'd be looking at roughly around £320 a month to have one of these. The Kia might not look like great value on the face of it when you compare it with, say, the equivalent Golf or perhaps Audi or things like that. For me, the Kias do win on value for money because they chuck an incredible level of kit at this car as standard. The only option on this car is the dual clutch transmission. That is it. All of the other things that you see here are standard. So I've got 4 heated seats in this car, panoramic sunroof, the JBL sound system, sat-nav, Bluetooth, wireless phone charging, reversing camera, parking sensors, you've got radar guided cruise control, you've got a speed limiter, you've got self-parking, you've got a heated steering wheel. There's loads in here. And as is standard with Kias these days, the interior is a seriously quality place to be. Yes, this might match some Golfs on price, but it genuinely does match them on quality too. If you don't believe me, go and try one. The old 3-door Proceed was dropped for the simple reason that nobody's really buying 3-door hatchbacks anymore. Very few companies are still persevering with them, and you may have noticed the fact that an awful lot of companies are now doing exclusively 5 doors. For me, the new Proceed is the perfect car for that sort of typical awkward person who wants a big car but says they don't. People like my grandmother, for example, who has an old Vauxhall Astra van that she really should replace, but she's afraid of getting an estate car because they're too big, when in actual fact her van is simply an estate car with rubbish visibility. Now, the car pulls along reasonably well for something that's only got a 1.4 litre engine, and although of course it's not going to set your heart on fire if you're a dedicated petrol head, if you're a youngster driving one of these about, it's pretty damn nippy. Certainly much better than the little 1 litre units or the naturally aspirated 1.2s and 1.4s of the world. It also handles really well. I know some of the people that have had input on the handling of these cars, and let's just say they really do know what they're talking about. The steering is precise and positive, actually has a surprising amount of feedback through it, and you can really chuck the car through some bends. It does not have the ultimate capability of the GT, and when you start pressing on, the rear end can actually be surprisingly lively. The seats are pretty decent, and I've done at least 2 450-mile stints in the car. I drove this all the way up to just north of Edinburgh, and they're pretty decent. Yeah, you get slightly tired after about 250 miles, but then you're doing most things. There's plenty of adjustment, which is mostly electric over here and mostly not over there, but that's one of the few criticisms of the car. In terms of fuel economy, the car was claiming about 46 mpg. I did the maths and it's a little bit optimistic. I was returning more like about 42 to 43, and that was in pretty ideal conditions. That's motorway type stuff. So it's not stellar on the mpg front, but it's pretty good. The tank is 50 litres, however, I think the fuel gauge is a little bit unnecessarily pessimistic because I've never got the range out of it that I should. I've calculated my MPG and I know what I should be getting out of a tank, but the reserve light was coming on way before it really should. So in practice I was filling up about every 300-350 miles. One odd quirk of the car's design is the fact that you can't really see that well out the back because the roof slopes down a touch. It does block your rear visibility after the sort of first 30 yards or so. There is plenty of storage space in the back, and this is actually a longer car than the Seed Sportswagen. And this is precisely why I call it a boring car for awkward people. It is actually a relatively good size. It's nowhere near as big as, say, the Optima that I had last, but it should take most things you throw at it. I think in terms of practicality, the Sportswagen is still slightly better because of its more uniform shape at the rear, but the Proceed is, well, a little bit sexier. It's not a great looking car, but it's certainly not a bad one either. This is also one of the very few cars where I can say that, hand on heart, sport mode really genuinely improves the drive. By default, the car's throttle and gearbox are mapped just a bit lazily for my liking. Putting it into sport mode makes it that much more eager out of junctions, makes it that much more interesting when you're doing exciting stuff, and when you're on the motorway, it will still change into 7th when required anyway. The dual clutch box is actually one of Kia's own, and it's very nice to use. The paddles aren't the best, but they're probably better than the ones in an Audi R8. And the gearbox is perfect. Bang, down, click, up. Slight delay there on the up. Yeah, when you're pressing on, it's better. But to be fair, it's not the sort of car where you're going to expect a super responsive gearbox anyway. There you go. When you brake, so you basically start fooling it. So if you're on the throttle and you change up, perfect. If you're on the brakes and you change down, perfect. If you want to try and trick it, you can. But overall, it's brilliant. And until then, I hadn't really noticed it sort of ever being a bit slow. So that's just me trying to be difficult. In practice, although I'm changing my own gears at the minute, it does a pretty good job of doing them itself. And for a car like this, I would go for the dual clutch. I wouldn't bother with the manual. If you're having the GT, I think there's much more reason to go for the manual, and it is a very nice manual indeed. But for this, nah, I would stick with the auto. It's also got a proper gear lever that moves depending on what mode the gearbox is in, and I really like that. I have a strong dislike for the gear levers which simply stay still, and I actually think they're a little bit dangerous. Spent quite a bit of time driving this car at night. The headlights are pretty decent. I'm not a fan of all of the safety equipment on the car. Some of it I find a little bit irksome. This car does have Kia's Lane Keep Assist, which means when you're on the motorway and you've got certain things activated, including the smart cruise control, it will actually kind of steer for you. Yeah, obviously it's not a full autopilot, nothing like that, but it'll just sort of nudge you and keep you going. One system I really don't like is their forward collision assist system. Now, like many, it's designed that if it thinks you're about to have an accident and you're not doing enough, it will stop the car for you. I was driving along, there was some traffic coming up, and I'd seen that, and I was already braking, not particularly hard, but I was already braking. And then when I was about 20 feet away from this van in front, the car just decided to slam on the brakes, and I came to a stop well over a car's length ahead of this van. Now, that meant that I nearly got rear-ended by the BMW behind me, which is kind of annoying. Fortunately, you can turn that system off and it will stay off. So if you don't like them, like I don't, because there's a lot of places around here, you get parked cars on the side of the road, and they really fool these systems, because you kind of go up to the cars and drive around them, and these things do not like them. You can also set it to be just an audible warning, so it'll just go beep beep and not actually brake for you, so you can have it set however you like. Same with the lane departure stuff, you can have it, you can turn it off, doesn't matter. I actually quite like the lights that turn on, you know, it'll warn you if there's a car there or something. Visibility in this is actually pretty good. The little window at the back actually does make a bit of a difference, and generally, you know what, this has been a really nice place to spend my time. If you are seriously considering one, they do make a lot of sense, especially if you are going to keep them for a long time. That's where people like Pendle come in quite handy, because with the lease deal, generally it's best for you to keep the car until the end of the term. I'm going to be doing a video soon, if I haven't already, talking about leasing, what it means, how it compares with PCP, and so on and so forth. But if you are considering buying one of these, you can do a lot worse than speaking to them, because very often they may be able to even beat their own advertised price if they've got a special on, something like that, and they can also offer you some alternative vehicles as well. For me though, if somebody came to me and wanted just a sort of boring hatchback that's on the big side, you know, they wanted something close to an estate but they didn't really want to commit, this is a very good choice indeed. And even if you're coming from something like a Golf, I genuinely don't think you're going to feel like you've downgraded at all. I'd see if I could get a little bit of discount on the car, because for my liking, the 28 and a bit grand is a little too much. Just a little too close to i30N territory, that kind of stuff. And I think Kia know that. I think they do. It is also one of those versatile cars that will make a great only car for somebody, make a great first car, or a car that you share with someone that's learning to drive, because it is going to be relatively low on insurance with the smaller engine and the good safety features and all that sort of jazz. And it would also be a sort of great, you know, spare car for the family, sort of run around type thing, the kind of, oh, we need to go somewhere, do something, like, you know, if you run like a more interesting car as a daily, and then you want something kind of boring to just do the boring stuff, this is quite good if you don't want to commit fully to something like a big diesel-y type thing. So there we have it, the Kia Proceed 1.4 DCT. It's a great boring car. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.